So sous-chef. My sous-chef is an ideal situation. It's like my wife. I'll go further. My sous-chef in an ideal situation is closer to me than my wife. I mean, no disrespect to my wife, Nancy, whom I adore and with whom I've been stealing horses since high school. It's just that I spend a lot more time with my sous-chef. The judge, as Nancy likes to remind me, will never believe it. Stephen, my sous-chef from 1993 until recently, when he finally took on a kitchen of his own, was my evil twin, my doppelganger, my director of clandestine services, a Bilko-esque character who, in addition to the usual sous-chef responsibilities such as running the kitchen in my absence, line cooking at a high level and watching my back, was invaluable to me for his remarkable ability to get things done. Key to the walk-in lost? Just ask Stephen. He'll have that door off its hinges in 10 minutes. Robot coupe need a replacement part in the middle of a busy holiday rush? Stephen will slip out the door and be back in minutes with the part slightly used and with another restaurant shallots still in it. Want to know what they're thinking in the office? Ask Stephen. He suborned the secretaries and is reading the inter-office email on a regular basis. Need bail money? A codeine pill for that knife wound? A new offset, serrated knife, real cheap? He's your boy. When I wonder what's in the heart and mind of someone I work with, I ask Stephen. I'll take him out, get him liquored up so he slabs his guts out, and I'll have a full report by noon next. All the things I couldn't do or couldn't be seen to do, he did, and he did them well. In fact, though a highly paid executive chef now for a major corporate outfit, he still works for me one night a week on my grill station to keep his hands in. I guess, so there's still an action arm to my administration, a covert action arm. Having a sous chef with excellent cooking skills and a criminal mind is one of God's great gifts. In our glory days together, like the capo of a crime family or the director of the CIA, I could look across the room at Stephen, raise an eyebrow, maybe make an imperceptible movement with my chin, and the thing, whatever the thing was at the time, will be done. Espionage, impromptu collection of materiel, revenge, disinformation, and interrogation, our specialties. I met Stephen at the supper club. It was 1993. I returned to the Bigs. I'd been working for Bigfoot at his West Village saloon, comfortable but in career limbo. I took a few weeks off to kick back in the Caribbean, and when I returned, I found a down on his luck Jimmy Sears in Bigfoot's kitchen. Bigfoot had been eating dinner at the Gotham recently and had experienced some kind of culinary epiphany. Suddenly, he wanted a real chef, and Sears, whose restaurant in the Hamptons had just gone under, but sleeping on floors around Manhattan, dodging creditors and ex-girlfriends, and in general going through a rough patch. Prime time for a Bigfoot recruiting effort. Jimmy was a brilliant cook. He'd come up with Brendan Walsh at Arizona 206, and the food he turned out in his brief time working the Bigfoot mines was so good. I'd stay after my shift was over, sit at the bar and order dinner and pay for it. Seeing what Jimmy could do in the kitchen really inspired me. I'd been slinking hash for way too long and tasting a real demi-glace again. Eating new, excited food, seeing new presentations made me remember what I enjoyed about food in the first place. I worked hard for Jimmy, and after knocking out a few thousand meals, going skiing together a few times, we'd become pals, and we determined that when Jimmy and Bigfoot's relationship came to an end, as it inevitably would, I'd keep an eye on the talented Mr. Sears, maybe come along for the ride when he made his next move. That clash of wills was not long in the coming. A few months later, Jimmy's period of saloon exile was over. He landed the exec chef gig at the Supper Club, a huge restaurant, nightclub, disco on West 47th Street, and began hiring cooks. I was one of the first to get the call. It was a plum job to be executive chef at the Supper Club. Hell, it was a plum job doing anything at the Supper Club. Perkadelic. The main dining room sat about 200 with private banquets and booths along the walls, a dance floor, and a stage from which a 12-piece orchestra played 40s swing music. There was an upstairs mezzanine, a holdover from the club's previous incarnation as a Broadway theater, which sat under 150 or so with a second bar. And off to the side, also on the second floor, was a smaller venue, a cabaret-cum VIP lounge called the Blue Room, where sat another 80. It was a pretty swank place, what they used to call a rug joint. Back in the 30s and 40s, a big glitzy operation with plenty of cracks to fall through. A place where you could easily picture a young Burt Lancaster just out of the joint, returning to find a young Kirk Douglas, the club owner, counting the night's take in one of the private banquets. Dinner and dancing and swing music went on from 5 to 11, after which the smoke machines would start belching chocolate-smelling fumes. The laser and telebeams would kick into action. The mirror ball would begin turning. A DJ would take over, and the Supper Club would become, for a while, the hottest dance club in town. Every night there was a different crowd with a different promoter. Chicks with dicks, night featured towering transvestites and pre-ops tottering around Ohio's to the house, and Techno Soul Kitchen featured pre-disco 70s funk with early blaxploitation films playing silently on the big screen, and 40 ounces and chicken wings for sale. Giant Step had acid jazz and fusion. Cafe Con Leche nights had salsa nueva and Latin funk. Funkmaster Flex attracted a hip-hop crowd. Noel Ashman attracted Euro trash and the face-lifted, well-dressed crowd. You never knew there was every variety of nightlife madness as each night people lined up down the street and around the corner onto 8th Avenue, waiting to get past our metal detectors and our 13 burly security goons so they could rip up our bathrooms, crowd around our 3 bars, smoke weed, snort coke, and copulate like bunnies in every nook and cranny of our cavernous pleasure palace. Jimmy brought me in as an overpaid guard manager man. 120 smacks a night to plate salads and squirt whipped cream on desserts, but Jimmy was not, at the time, an organizational mastermind. Jimmy spent much of his time rollerblading around the city, schmoozing. He had a second job cooking for Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola. He was secretly working out a deal for his triumphant return to the Hamptons, and of course he was poking everything in his skirt. By the time he'd swing by the supper club, little things like ordering, scheduling, rotating food, and organizing menus were afterthoughts. I quickly found that doing it myself was easier than waiting for Jimmy to show up and do it for us. And no time at all, I was running the nuts and bolts end of the kitchen, making sure that we had the food, the prep, the bodies, and information needed to crank out the enormous volume of parties, buffets, hors d'oeuvres, and regular menu items that businesses required. Jimmy's food, as always, was magnificent. But Jimmy himself seldom seemed to be around. After a few months, I was de facto sous-chef or kitchen manager, the guy everyone came to find out what the hell was going on. And when I came back after another brief vacation in the Caribbean, Jimmy, though still nominally the chef, was secretly and simultaneously employed as a chef at the inn at Quogue out in the Hamptons, and Stephen Temple was working in the supper club kitchen. I guess it was a historic moment. He showed up looking for a sauté position. His even more degenerate friend, Adam, real last name unknown, in tow. I had a few weeks to watch these two in action before Sears slipped off to the Hamptons in his even more reduced summer schedule, and I begged, pleaded, and implored him not to saddle me with these two coke-snorting, thieving, fire-starting, whoring, boozing, and troublemaking miscreants. Jimmy ignored my entreaties. When Stephen and Adam were in the kitchen together, I couldn't turn my back for a second. They were hyperactive and destructive, two evil Energizer bunnies who, when they weren't squabbling and throwing food at each other, seemed always to be dodging out of the kitchen on various criminal errands. They were loud, larcenous, relentlessly curious. Stephen can't look at a desk without riffling its contents. They played practical jokes to set up whole networks of like-minded co-workers. A few weeks after he arrived, Stephen already had the whole club wired from top to bottom. The office help would tell him what everyone else was getting paid. Security would give him a cut of whatever drugs they impounded at the door, and the techies let him play with the computers that went in order for, say, Swordfish came in. The dupe would also say, fuck me hard. Maintenance gave him a share of the lost and found and split the leftover booty from the promotional events. Goodie bags filled with cosmetics, CDs, t-shirts, bomber jackets, wristwatches, etc. The chief of maintenance even gave Stephen the key to a disused office on Supper Club's neglected third floor, an old janitor's storage room that, unbeknownst to management, had been converted to a carpeted, furnished, and fully decorated pleasure pit, complete with a working phone. It was a space suitable for small gatherings, drug deals, and empire building. The room was decorated with posters of Latino women penetrating themselves with vegetables, and it had been done up with a pilfered carpet, remnants, and furniture from the adjoining Edison Hotel. As the space was located up a long flight of garbage-strewn backstairs behind the reeking locker rooms down a dark, unlit hall where spare china was stored, management never visited, and a young man could be secure in the knowledge that whatever dark business he was conducting, no matter how loud, unruly, or felonious, was unlikely to be disturbed. When management finally got wind of the fact that Jimmy was getting paid for not working at the supper club, I was made the chef. Unfortunately, Stephen had already carved out his own invisible empire within my own. It made things difficult. The boy could cook, though. The club, particularly during the winter party season when we regularly did banquets and sit-downs for hundreds and hundreds of people, required strength, skill, and endurance, and the cook's ability to improvise fast. The bulletin board on my office was clogged with party sheets. Sit-down meals for 300 would lead directly into 4 buffets, and a cocktail reception for 700, often on the same day. The logistics involved in buying the food, preparing it, and moving it around for so many people were staggering. The invasion of Normandy every day of the week. Having an enterprising and capable little bastard like Stephen around was a powerful asset. Here was a guy who could stay up all night snorting coke and drinking Long Island iced teas, getting into trouble of the most lurid kind, and still show up the next morning and knock out 1,000 meals. A man spent away too much time investigating the criminal activities of the Stephen and Adam crime family, always calling one or the other into my office for a tune-up or an interrogation. I must have fired them both at least 3 times, but particularly Stephen always found a way to weasel their way back into my good graces and make themselves invaluable. Stephen, for a while, it seems, saw the light to whatever extent that's possible with Stephen. One night, Nancy and I bumped into him at a bar in West Hampton. He'd been moonlighting, typical of Stephen, for Sears, and when I saw him, he was slurring his words, his jaw twitching from cocaine, his eyes scrambling around in his sockets like caged spider monkeys, and he slapped an arm around my shoulders and denounced that he was going to start showing up to work on time, and he was going to start behaving responsibly, that he was going to turn over a new leaf. I remember Nancy looking at me as if to say, yeah, right. He was, of course, promising much more than he could ever deliver. Life with Stephen over the last 5 or 6 years has been notable for one hideous outrage after another. But he did begin showing up at work on time. He stopped disappearing on 2- and 3-day benders. He tried as best as he could to refrain from bringing shame and disgrace upon my house and kitchen. Most important, Stephen suddenly and inexplicably became the sort of person who, when he says he's going to do a thing, does it. This, more than anything else, is the essence of a sous-chefdom. With Stephen around, I no longer had to come in the morning and say, did you take care of that thing? The thing was always taken care of. I like that. I made him my sous-chef. Let's revisit reconstructing from an untrustworthy and incomplete record the checkered career of Stephen Temple. He grew up on Long Island, attended Johnson and Wales Culinary School, where unsurprisingly he ran into trouble, something about an assault, and was nearly expelled. He worked in a diner in Providence while he was at J&W. Stephen, for all his faults, likes money and was never afraid to work. Did time at Big Berry's out on the island, bounced around a progression of knuckleheads jobs, and eventually migrated to Northern California. Ended up at a joint called La Casa Nostra, where he encountered the uncontrollable idiot savant and baking genius Adam, real last name unknown. Nobody knows as far as the government is concerned. He doesn't even exist, like Hunt and Liddy. These are 2 guys who should never have been allowed in a room together. When they're together, a sort of supernova of stupidity occurs, a critical mass of bad behavior. They like to reminisce about this California Idol period of their lives, snorting coke through uncooked bene. Snorting coke through uncooked bene, projectile vomiting in the parking lots of strip clubs, driving their owner into insolvency, soliciting, pandering, stealing, and in every way leaving a trail of destruction of bodily fluids in their wake. Stephen returned to New York probably 1 step ahead of the law and worked brief stints at Matthews with Matthew Kenny, asshole, says Stephen, Carmine's, the Plaza Hotel, and some other very decent restaurants for brief periods of time. Along the way, he managed to pick up a very respectable set of line cooking chops, as well as that peculiar variety of less legitimate skills, and continue to serve him well to this day. He remains a remarkable font of knowledge about the inner workings of the restaurant business. The real cogs and wheels. He can fix a broken compressor, repair appliances, pick locks, jury rig electrical power where there was none before, unclog a grease trap, find a breaker, fix a refrigerator door, and he's a close observer of every detail of human and mechanical activity in the workplace, a guy who notices things, probably a result of all those years looking for opportunities for criminality. Shit, I dropped you guys. Look at, I dropped you right there where they... criminality, criminality. Little gets by him. If somebody's running a scam, Stephen knows all about it. The idea more than likely occurred to him first. As we battled through party season at the supper club, Stephen and I did a lot of after-work drinking together. sitting around reviewing the events of the evening, planning our moves for the next day, pondering the mysteries of this life we live. I came to rely on him more and more to find out what was going on and fix things, to help me in the crushing, relentless routine of serving hundreds and hundreds of meals, different menus every day, hors d'oeuvres, a la carte meals, managing a staff of cooks that would swell into double shifts for big events, then shrink back to a core group of about 8 for regular service. Buying $10,000 worth of meat a day gave me a strange and terrible thrill, like riding a roller coaster, and the simple act of moving ceiling high piles of perishable fish and produce to my kitchen every day was a puzzle, a challenge I enjoyed. I like being a general again, deploying forces where needed, sending out flying squads of cooks to put out brush fires on the buffet stations, arranging reconnaissance, forward observers, communicating by walkie-talkie with the various corners of the club. More filet on buffet 6 will come to call. More salmon on buffet 4. This is security at the door. I got a body count of 300 and climbing. They're really coming in. Amusingly, we shared a radio band with a nearby undercover unit from the Street Crimes Division of the NYPD. So I think he's still talking about that supper club. He's still talking about the supper club where they went to, he met his sous-chef, right? Making some tea. Yes, you see. This chapter has like maybe 4 pages left, but I think Bourdain is a writer, bro. Okay, then them about undercover unit. They were always trying to get us to change frequency, which we couldn't as we used them all. One for managers, one for kitchen and security band. After threats and shouts didn't work, the cops got clever. They listened, got to know our lingo and our locations, and would play games with us, calling for more roast beef on buffet 1. When none was needed, or creating notional emergencies that would cause security to gang rush the mez bathroom to break up a non-existent fight. It was a wild style of life. It wasn't unusual to see naked women hosing ice cream off their bodies in the kitchen pot sink, the Howard Stern event, sinister Moroccan food tasters packing heat, Royal Air Morocco party, Ted Kennedy in the kitchen walkthrough, eerily reminiscent of RFK's last moments, our drunken crew in a hostile mood bullying a lost Mike Myers into doing that Wayne's World excellent thing. Rosie Perez hanging on the saute end, fitting right in as if she worked with us, sitting on the cutting board. What's good to eat in here, boys? A clip piercing on stage. Stern again. Madonna fans trying to sneak through the kitchen from the hotel. She brings her own eggs for Caesar salad. Concerts, swimsuit models, hardcore hip hoppers, go-go boys. One day there would be a wedding for 100 people where the customers spent $1,000 per person for lobster and truffle ravioli. Individual bottles of vodka frozen in blocks of ice, baby wedding cakes for every table. And the next, the whole club will be tented over, filled with dervishes and dancers from North Africa serving couscous and pigeon pie for 1,000. Thanks to the Big Foot program, I never ran out of food, was always prepared and was never late, and Stephen helped enormously. Finally made him a serious character in my eyes was the night he ran a knife through his hand while trying to hack frozen demi-glace out of a bucket. Squirting blood all over the place, he wrapped his hand in an apron and listened to my instructions. Get your sorry ass down to St. Vincent's. They got a fast emergency room. Get yourself stitched up and get yourself back here in 2 fucking hours. We're going to be busy as hell tonight. I need you on the line. He returned 90 minutes later and managed to work one-handed on the saute station, very capably cranking out 150 or so a la carte dinners. I was pleased with his demonstration of loyalty. Working through pain and injury counts for a lot with me. I don't really know what happened to the supper club. The general manager, with whom I had a good working relationship, was suddenly gone. Nightclub operations were shut down, possibly in response to neighborhood complaints about noise. Unmanageable crowds and streets changed in ownership. The new management team was an oily duo of ex-waiters from the Waldorf, a Spaniard and an I don't know who liked to pretend they were French. I answered an ad in the paper for a chef and was quickly in the wind. I took Stephen along. One look at 1-5 and I knew the place was doomed. Jerry Kretschmer with hugely talented Alfred Portel in tow had just failed in the same location. The new owners were the two owners were very nice, matronly, middle-aged ladies with little to no restaurant experience, but I fell in love with the kitchen. It It was huge, well equipped and loaded with history. I'd even worked there for a day while at CIA as a part of a day in New York field trip. The dining room was appointed with the salvage from the ocean liner Normandy, which had sunk mysteriously into New York Harbor. It was an irresistible impulse. My predecessor, a jumped-up megalomaniac boob, had already plowed through most of the partners' dough, insisting on a kitchen staff of 13 people to serve 60 or so dinners at night. So I figured it wouldn't be too hard to make a difference and do some honest toil for these nice ladies, save them a few bucks. Hiring crew, post-supper club with Steven as my underboss was always fun. I felt like Lee Marvin with Steven as Ernest Bourdain in The Dirty Dozen when they recruit a fighting unit from the dregs of the stockade. Steven and I would meet and I'd say, who's available? We discuss who was still talking to himself, suffering from paranoid delusions. But can he still work the line? Who could be lured away from another job? Is he happy? How happy? Was he getting paid? Who was still loyal from the collection of part-timers and freelancers we used for party work at the supper club? Who had evenings free after knocking off at the Le Bernardine? Who could keep it together, show up on time, keep his mouth shut, and do the right thing, even if he woke up every morning naked and covered with puke on a cold bathroom floor? Stephen would scour the lunatic fringe, other chefs' kitchens, flipping through the amazing mental Rolodex he kept in his hand. So anyway, he's at a new spot now. So I'm going to end it right here, guys. Peace.